Hi, I'm Michael Marin. At Holy Name Medical Center, we believe that all citizens need to be informed about the important healthcare issues that affect their daily lives. That's why we're proud to support programming produced by the Caucus Educational Corporation and their partners in public television.
Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by TD Bank, Holy Name Medical Center in Teaneck, New Jersey. Healing begins here. Suez, ready for the resource revolution.
QualCare Inc., a managed care company administering health plans that care about your health care.
Choose New Jersey. Our mission is attracting companies to the Garden State. NJ Best, New Jersey's 529 college savings plan. Turn a dream into a degree. And by New Jersey Sharing Network, dedicated to saving lives through organ and tissue donation.
This is One-on-One. I'm an equal American just like you are.
The jobs of tomorrow are not the jobs of yesterday.
Look at this. You got this?
Here it is, man. Look at that.
Life without dance is boring.
When you first heard that they were doing Charlie Rose and Gayle King, didn't you go, what?
Do you enjoy talking politics?
No. People call me because they feel nobody's paying attention.
Our culture, I don't think, has ever been tested the way it's being tested right now.
Such a good question. High five.
Hi, I'm Steve Adubato. Everything you've ever wanted or needed to know about love, you're going to find out right now. Dr. Helen Fisher is in the house. She's a biological anthropologist and the author of a wonderful book called Anatomy of Love. Good to see you, Helen.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Love is a complex subject, is it not?
Oh, gosh, it makes the world go round. I mean, we pine for love. We live for love. We kill for love. We die for love. It's one of the most powerful brain systems that ever evolved.
But do we really understand it?
Well, I'm trying to do exactly that, you know. I mean, I've studied the evolution of it. We've put over 100 people in brain scanners, and we know what happens when you fall madly in love, when you're rejected in love, and when you're in love long term. So yes, we're beginning to understand what love is. You know, it's a brain system, like the fear system or the anger system. It evolved, and it evolved for important reasons.
And the book, based on the research, describe the methodology.
Oh boy, well, this took me 10 years to write this book. It first came out in 1992, and then they called me a couple years ago, and they said, well, all you need to do is, it's a classic, all we want to do is, you know, just write a new introduction and a new final chapter. And I said, oh, no problem. Well, then I read the book. It was 25 years old, so I've really rewritten the book. But I had to relook at divorce in 80 cultures, adultery in the genetics of adultery, and where we're going in the future. I mean, it's an opus is what it is.
It really is. I tell you, there's so many parts of this that I find fascinating. One of them in particular that struck me was that you say there are 4 different types of, is it personalities?
Oh, yes. I love that part. It's some of my newest stuff, yes.
So, okay, the 4 different types.
Yeah.
Explorers are?
Those are people who are very expressive of the dopamine system in the brain. They are risk takers, novelty seekers, curious, creative, spontaneous, energetic, but extremely curious people. I think a good example, well, most of the people on television are. You also have to be very quick. They've got to have a lot of interest. They're most likely to go to college. They make the most money. They also lose the most money.
Do we fall in love with other kinds of people? You've got builders, directors, and negotiators.
Yes.
Are we better in love with another?
So, they tend to fall in love with people like themselves.
Really?
Yes, absolutely. They want somebody who's equally energetic, equally curious, equally creative, wants to jump up and ride bikes through New Jersey on the weekend.
Don't we compete?
No, I don't think they do compete. These people are they're autonomous, they're independent, and they want a partner to be with them. Everybody competes to a certain extent, but
Sure.
These people are, they're very exploring people.
Builders.
Exactly opposite. These are people who are very expressive of the serotonin system in the brain, and they tend to be traditional, conventional, follow the rules, respect authority, meticulous, orderly, tend to be more religious. In fact, there's a gene for religiosity that is actually in the serotonin system. And they conform to social rules. As a matter of fact, there's a particular gene in the serotonin system linked with social norm conformity, and it's most prevalent in China and Japan.
Is that
we
right?
see it in America. A good example would be Mitt Romney. Yeah, or even Ted Cruz. I mean, these people are almost standard examples of the high serotonin builder variety.
And they would not do great with an explorer.
you know, they go for people like themselves. Traditional goes for traditional. But, you know, some people want the energy of the explorer because they are more traditional. And sometimes the explorer will be going around the block a million times, and finally in their mid-40s they want to settle down, and the builder becomes very attractive to them because this person offers home and family and stability.
Tell me about the directors.
They're the high testosterone type. And if you...
High testosterone type?
Oh, yeah. I mean, take a look at Trump, for example. His problem,
Donald Trump.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's aggressive, assertive. They tend to be analytical, logical, direct, decisive, very direct. Look at him.
I'm sorry, you said analytical and logical? Are we still talking about Trump?
I don't think we are. But
I wasn't sure where we were going with this.
One doesn't have all of these characteristics, but these are characteristics that are linked with the testosterone system. I think Steve Jobs is another good example. Bill Gates is a good example. Hillary Clinton is a good example. She's a tough-minded girl.
You said strong testosterone.
Yeah, you know, Margaret Thatcher is a very good example of high testosterone women. A lot of
What is that? Oh, you're confusing me now. High testosterone women?
Yes, you can be. There's high testosterone women and there's high testosterone men. There's high estrogen men and there's high estrogen women.
Whoa, wait a minute! I'm getting thrown off here.
Yeah. Not all men are high testosterone is the bottom line. Some of them are very. I mean, look at Gandhi.
Okay, but you're talking about women who are high testosterone.
Yeah,
women.
Right.
Are they more, am I confusing terms, they're more masculine?
They tend to go in, they've got some they have what we would call masculine traits. They're high testosterone traits, really. You see them in big business. High testosterone women go higher up. They're less interested in home and family. They're more interested in career. You'll see middle-aged women, as estrogen goes down, unmasking testosterone, they will become more assertive, more aggressive, more analytical.
I have 8 or 9 producers, all of whom are women on our team. I'm trying to figure out what categories they fall into, but basically they tell me what to do.
They're probably high. Well, you know, don't forget we're a combination of more than just one. These are brain systems, they're not cubbyholes. And the fourth, of course, is the high estrogen type.
The negotiators?
Yes, the negotiators. They good people skills, good verbal skills, imaginative, intuitive, emotionally expressive, empathetic, more trusting.
People pleasers?
Definitely people pleasers.
That's my wife, Jennifer.
Sure. And you probably are the high testosterone. But you must also be...
Very high.
Yeah, you must also be that.
Makes no sense, I'm sorry.
But you're probably also high dopamine because, you know, a person in your kind of job needs to be spontaneous, needs to be curious about a lot of things, et cetera. So you're probably the high testosterone and high dopamine. She may well be the high estrogen and dopamine. Is she creative,
She's just very
curious?
well matched with someone with a big ego and a narcissist.
Okay, that's good. She's high estrogen.
Yes. Oh, why is it you say that men fall in love quicker?
Because they do. You know, yeah, we have data on, I've got data on over 30,000 people. I'm the chief scientific advisor to Match.com, the internet dating site. And
you are?
We do an annual study called Singles in America. We do not poll the Match population, we poll the American population. So it's based on the U.S. Census.
Men fall in love faster.
They not only fall in love faster, because they're so visual, and because they're less picky, but also they fall in love more often. When a man does fall in love, he wants to introduce the person to friends and family sooner. They want to move in sooner. Yes. They have more intimate conversations with their wives because women have their intimate conversations with their girlfriends, and men are 2.5 times more likely to kill themselves when a relationship is over. So bottom line is men are more romantic.
We don't handle it well?
No, you don't handle it well.
So if my wife were to leave me, hold on, if my wife were to leave me.
Yeah.
Jennifer, you watching? If she were to leave me, I mean, I adore this woman.
Great.
If she were to leave me, I would have a hard time with it.
Everybody has a hard time with it.
But I would have a
Nobody gets out alive. Nobody gets out alive. I mean, but the bottom line is we've put these people in the machine, brain scanner. And what happens when you've been rejected in love, there's a lot of activity in brain regions linked with intense romantic love. You don't fall out of love with them.
No.
Deep activity in brain regions linked with attachment.
Cheating. You said something fascinating in this book about cheating.
Yeah, I studied cheating.
Yeah, you say all of our cameramen are great, tremendous cameramen. Steve Barcy has a smile on his face as I say this. You say that cheating is not necessarily, you said it's a primordial instinct and is not necessarily a sign that you are not in love with the person you're cheating on, which I'm confused by.
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me tell you that, everybody likes to talk about cheating, but the real hallmark of the human animal is that we bother to pair up at all. We are a pair-bonding animal. We do form pair bonds. We fall in love and we make long-term partnerships. So that's what makes us really unusual. 97% of mammals do not bother to pair up to rear their young, and people do. So let's start off with that. But yes, I've looked at adultery in over 42 societies. We know some of the genetics that probably play a role. And if you ask somebody why they're adulterous, they will give you all kinds of explanations. Like,
what do you think the reason is? I'm sorry, I interrupted
there's
you.
many reasons. Many reasons. People will say, well, I wanted to get caught and patch up my marriage. I wanted to get caught and get out of my marriage. I wanted to supplement my marriage. I got lonely when my partner was out of town. I wanted to solve a sex problem. I wanted to walk on the wild side. That's a whole lot of psychological explanations.
What do you think it is? She was hot.
But that'll work too.
No, but what do you think the real reason is?
Well, there's got to be some Darwinian evolutionary reasons, or people wouldn't do it in every culture in the world.
Really?
So one has to also look at, why did this evolve? I mean, why do we even have this propensity? By the way, I am not endorsing it in any way, but trying to understand it. Let's dial back a million years. If a man has a wife and 2 children, fine. But if he occasionally goes over the hill and sleeps with another woman and has 2 extra children, he would double the amount of DNA he's going to pass into tomorrow. Those children will live and pass on whatever it is in that man to be susceptible to adultery. And with women, a woman could get extra resources.
You're talking about extra children. You're talking about children that aren't... Wait, you're confusing now. Who's to say that you want to have other children with another woman?
You don't necessarily want to have other children with another woman.
But you're saying that's a drive for a lot of people.
Okay, from a Darwinian perspective, if you have 4 children and I have no children, you live on and I die out. That's what Darwin said. So the bottom line is, it's not how smart you are, how pretty you are, how much money you make, how much you do television. It's how many children you have to pass on your DNA to tomorrow. That's basic natural selection. So basically, if you have more children, you're going to pass on more of your DNA. And adultery enabled you to do both. So I think what we really have is a dual strategy, a tremendous drive to fall in love and pair up and rear our children as a team, and also a propensity to adultery. And the more we know about this, the more we can focus on trying to solve it.
Before I let you out of here, I got to ask you about antidepressants. You say we are using them too much, and it impacts our ability to express love, be in love.
Steve, you ask great questions. Thank you.
I don't know the answers. I just have the questions. Go ahead.
Well, this is a hypothesis still, but when you take an SSRI, a serotonin booster, Prozac, Paxil, the newest ones, Lexapro, et cetera, you're driving up the serotonin system in the brain. That jeopardizes or pushes down the dopamine system. The dopamine system is linked with feelings of intense romantic love. You take these drugs in order to feel less emotion. And of course, romantic love is all about emotion. So the bottom line is, I've come to believe that these drugs can dampen and even jeopardize your feeling of intense romantic love and feelings of deep attachment. Now, some people need these drugs to get up in the morning. I'm not talking about them. But psychiatrists from Harvard actually even say that about 73% of people on these drugs don't need them. And basically, they're numbing their brain systems for romantic love and attachment. And I get an email from somebody around the world almost every week, somebody who says, my wife and I were madly in love. She went back to school. We've been married 11 years. She wasn't doing well. They gave her these drugs. And 6 months later, she comes to me and says, I want a divorce. I can't feel anything for you. Yeah, one person said it's like...
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, one person said it's like the invasion of the body snatchers. So, I mean, what is a world without love, for Christ's sakes, you know?
I can't even imagine it.
Yeah.
Real quick, one more quickie. Online dating, your thoughts on it?
Well, as I say, I'm chief advisor to Match.com.
But be objective.
It's the newest great thing. I wouldn't work with it if I wasn't objective about it. I want to tell you right off the bat.
Love on the online dating, how much could you really get this?
That's the point.
Look at the connection between us.
By the way, the only real algorithm is your own brain. These are not dating services. They're introducing service. We can introduce you to somebody from the right background, the right level of education,
where's the chemistry?
Right interest, but you've got to get out there yourself and meet the person. The only real algorithm is your own brain. So that's the point. We can introduce you to a million people, but you have to get out there and do the work. We can't do that for you.
Is love forever?
Well, the brain system for romantic love is forever. If we survive another million years, we will still be following in love, just the way we did a million years ago.
Well, I cannot thank you enough. Do you mind if I plug your book?
I'd be delighted.
It's called The Anatomy of Love. The author is Dr. Helen Fisher. A Natural History of Mating, Marriage, and Why We Stray. You see that, Steve Barfi? These cameramen, I'm telling you, they're learning something every day on this show. It's great stuff. Helen, I want to thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you.
It's great stuff. Stay with us. We'll be right back right after this.
To see more one-on-one with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at steveadubato.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato PhD and follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
We are pleased to be joined by Michael Gross. He is a journalist and the author of a compelling new book called Focus: The Secret, Sexy, Sometimes Sordid World of Fashion Photographers. Good to see you, Michael.
Nice to be here, Steve.
What makes the world of fashion photographers so incredibly interesting?
Well, they're the people who kind of encapsulate dreams. They take a beautiful girl in a frock, and they have to do something more with it. And what fashion photography has done in the last 50 years is really capture the moment in a way that no other art form does, because it's so instantaneous, it's constantly changing. If it's not changing, it's not doing its job.
Who are these people?
Well, in the book, what I do is I concentrate on about 15 of them. And they're the ones who invented the genre, who changed the conversation, or who lived the life of fashion photographer to the fullest, which of course means that they got around a lot.
Now, some of these players, some of these fashion photographers, by the way, were they players?
Oh, some of them are serious players.
Describe that.
Well, look at Gilles Ben-Simon, who was the photographer who ended up running Elle magazine.
Was he married to Kelly Ben-Simon?
He was married to Kelly Ben-Simon, but much more important before that to Elle Macpherson.
Yes, much more important.
AKA the body.
Yes. Not that I pay attention to these things.
You know, Gilles is a guy who early in his career only dated editors who could help him rise as a fashion photographer, and then at a certain point he suddenly discovered that all of those girls that he was seeing through his lens were available to him, and he indulged greatly. And so he had a series of affairs with ever hotter models, leading to the Real Housewife. And you know, this is a guy who lived the life. There's stuff about him that I can't say on television, but I'm trying to think if there's a way to say it. He's a very big man.
We are public broadcasting. We're a family series.
In the fashion business.
Yes, we appreciate your candor. So let me ask you this, Michael. This industry, right? How much of it is art? How much of it is politics? And how much business? Loaded question, I know.
Well, I think it's a combination of the three. You know, in the best cases, they make it art. Basically, it's about moving merchandise. That's what it's about.
Moving merchandise.
Moving merchandise. It's about selling frocks. And these days, it's more about selling scarves, perfumes, and the little tchotchkes that have some brand's name on them rather than frocks, because frocks cost too much money. Frocks are just the loss leaders, basically, in the fashion business these days. Where the art comes in is when you get somebody like a Richard Avedon who's really good at it.
Explain to people who that is.
Well, Richard Avedon started taking pictures in 1946. He became the chief photographer of Harper's Bazaar through the 50s. I think the clearest indication of his importance is that a Richard Avedon photograph holds the record for the highest price ever paid for a fashion photo. That's Dick. The highest price ever paid for a fashion photo, which is in excess of $1 million, for his photograph Dovima and the Elephants, which is that wonderful model standing with the elephants also posing like a wonderful model. Over $1 million at auction. Now, somewhere he crossed the line from commerce into art. And he really represents, he and Irving Penn probably represent the pinnacle of fashion photography.
For you, the fascination with celebrity, people in this world, your dad was?
My father was Milton Gross. He was a syndicated sports columnist for the New York Post in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s.
And so as a kid, in the notes I was getting ready for the show, you interacted with, you knew of Mickey Mantle and Sandy Koufax.
Well, yeah, I mean, I kind of grew up in Yankee Stadium and the Polo Grounds and the various Madison Square Gardens, and hanging around while my father did his job. And
I can't believe that picture.
Yeah.
I cannot believe that
He
picture.
wanted me to go into the batting cage that day. And then he saw that Mel Stottlemyre was pitching, and Stottlemyre was very young then, and he said, no, Stottlemyre's a little too wild. I don't think it's safe. So I was foiled from getting into the batting cage.
I will tell you, and there's Sandy Koufax. Boy, I'll tell you. Let me ask you something. For you, these celebrities, are they more interesting than the rest of us, or are they just in different positions?
I was more interested in what, for lack of a better term, is called the zeitgeist. I was more interested in where the cultural fascination was. So when I was a kid, you know, you're 11 years old, what do you care about? You care about your team.
Yes.
When I got to be 13 years old, I didn't care about my father's people anymore. I cared about rock stars.
Yes.
You know, that's who was cracking the whip on the culture at that point. When I got out of college, I went to work as a rock magazine editor. What I discovered was that rock stars all dated models. Models were, you know, kind of interesting as you're getting a little older.
Yes.
And at a certain point, I segued into covering the fashion business, and it was really just a case of chasing girls. But you know, what happened was I became really interested in the fashion business. Through the fashion business, because I was sitting in the front row at fashion shows, covering fashion for the New York Times, I was seated next to basically the aristocracy of the world, or at least their wives and whichever husbands came along to the shows. And I became fascinated with rich people. So the two areas that I've concentrated on as an adult has been fashion and what I refer to as the American aristocracy, which is rich people.
So what's interesting about this is in your book, Focus, well, there are a lot of things you can't talk about. You do talk about an awful lot of people in ways that I'm sure would be interesting, but also potentially embarrassing for some of them. Fair to say?
Well, you know, are you embarrassed by what you've done?
Well, here's my question. Have you gotten any blowback from this?
Well, not yet. Nobody's read it. You're one of the first.
Well, will you?
I imagine that there might be some, because people who are in positions of celebrity and power become accustomed to being told yes, and occasionally someone comes along and says no. I'll give you an example.
Sure.
Richard Avedon has passed away. Dick actually inspired my writing this book, because he inspired my writing the predecessor book, which I wrote 20 years ago, called Model.
Yes.
And so now it's 20 years later, Avedon has died, and I know that the Richard Avedon Foundation will not allow me to run any Richard Avedon photographs unless I submit my book for their approval. And I don't write for their approval, I write for readers. I don't write for subjects. There are two kinds of people.
It's a conflict.
Well, there are two kinds of people who do this job. There are the ones who want to be invited to lunch, and there are the ones who want to entertain the people who buy their books.
You're the second type.
I want to inform and entertain the people who buy my books, and my responsibility is to them, not to my subjects. Sure, there are places where one doesn't go. One doesn't cross certain lines. I find children a little bit out of bounds. Now, again, in the case of the Richard Avedon Foundation, who runs the Richard Avedon Foundation? His son.
Right.
So you have to mention John
they're adults,
Avedon.
and they're not children.
And they're adults, and they're not children. And, you know, you don't go into the bathroom. But occasionally, when someone puts their sexuality on the line, the bedroom becomes fair game as well. Now, that might be a place for potential embarrassment. But if you're someone like Calvin Klein, who is advertising with millions and millions of dollars, and you're selling ideas about hedonism and about gender, and you're using that to sell jeans and underwear, then I think your own personal behavior becomes absolutely fair game.
Before I let you out of here, fashion photography has changed dramatically. You say today it's more by committee. Photography by committee, what do you mean?
Well, you know, the digital revolution destroyed a lot of art forms and businesses. You know, it's harmed books, it's harmed music. It's also harmed fashion photography because A, fashion photography is now a democratic medium. Anyone can do it. B, digital has killed fashion magazines, and fashion magazines were the Medicis of fashion photography. Also, because of digital and because of the way the world has changed, big brands now dominate everything. So when you go to a photo set, instead of seeing one model, one photographer, and maybe one editor, there's a team of 40 people who are deciding, and they're looking at instantaneous images on a screen. Move that, change this. And it's become illustration, not photography, and it's become creativity by committee. And creativity by committee is a very different form than a single person making a piece of art that is designed to delight and astonish or shock or make you go, which is what the best fashion photography can do.
The book is called Focus, The Secret, Sexy, Sometimes Sordid World of Fashion Photographers. The author is Michael Gross. Go out and get it. Good stuff. Thank you so much, Michael. Very compelling.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by TD Bank, Holy Name Medical Center in Teaneck, New Jersey, Suez,
Qualcare Inc.,
Choose New Jersey, NJ Best, and by New Jersey Sharing Network. Promotional support provided by the New Jersey Chamber of Commerce, the statewide voice of business in New Jersey,
and by bestofnj.com, covering all New Jersey has to offer.
Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.
My name is Dr. John Rundback. I'm actually the medical director of the Interventional Institute here at Holy Name Medical Center. Peripheral arterial disease actually is extremely common. It's one of the forms of hardening of the artery. As interventional radiologists, we perform minimally invasive image-guided procedure. Generally, the procedures we do are alternatives to what would otherwise be major surgery. Almost 80% of those patients can avoid amputation if they're referred for us for these sort of procedures.
Holy Name Medical Center in Teaneck, New Jersey, 1-877 Holy Name. Healing begins here.